Good day everyone, this is John here from 3D Create Tutorials and welcome to this channel. So for this tutorial I'll be going through the basics of creating a quad model actually in Blender, and this will be a very simple object to create, and it's mostly for beginners to learn how to do quad based modeling. If you haven't done a lot of quad based modeling, this is a really good concept to do, because if you're going to have like an object that's going to be far away and you don't really want to have a lot of polys because you want to have a nice very light scene, then you can get away with something like this, very quad based, and it has the form and the shape, but again, from far away you don't even see those little cuts and lines. So it just depends what you're trying to do, but this tutorial will be kind of just going over how to create a quad based handle. And when you turn this back on and you get real close, then you got a really nice detail and it looks like it's a real object. And it's just very easy to create this. So let's get started. So this is a reference that I created earlier. I'm going to create something just like this so everybody can understand how this is done. So just a quick note, I'll be adding a link here for my Patreon page for anybody that would like to actually download this object for reference to bring in their scene as part of the background image or object in the background, so they can use it to kind of help place it a little easier. Again, it will be for free on Patreon. All right, thank you. The way I create things normally is I start off with a very simple shapes, and I try to use like a surface first before I do anything. And the way to do that is you have a lot more control at the end, and it just saves you a lot of time and effort if you do this. So what I mean by that is you kind of go in and just create a surface, get rid of all the form, so it's not a solid basically, or not a full object. It's just a surface model. And let's get started. So I'm going to go to object mode and add, and in here in the add section there's a mesh section, right? I'm going to go ahead and start off with a basic simple cylinder. And the reason for that is I want to create the actual form. Now this form here is way too busy, and well, I'm going to first of all I'm going to go ahead and take this down to like 10. So you got all your information down here below. Also, everything I'm doing on my keys is down here as well. So let's go ahead and hit enter 10 here. I'm going to make this very simple shape. And with that said, I'm going to also rotate this on the actual. Now, to know which way to go is kind of like your direction here. So here I want to rotate this, and I want to rotate this actually on the Y. So I'm going to put in 90 degrees on this. I'm just trying to get this kind of figured out. And you see this is not that thick wide-wise. I want to kind of emulate that. So the depth will go down a little bit. We'll put this at like 1.1 basically instead of 2. So about half the size. And yeah, I think that looks good right there. We can actually click off. I'm going to hide these other parts of the object because they're just getting in the way. So H key is quick keys to hide something. And this is fine where it is. So here we go. So the first thing is you got your basic block, and it has nothing like this, of course, but we're going to start modifying this. So let's go to edit mode and make sure that was selected. And we're going to select the faces. So we're going to select each of these faces on both sides of this, like that. And then I'm going to also select these lower ones, because we're going to try to just keep the very basics of this model. So it's really like 4 sections, if that's what you want to. And this way it's perfectly round. Even though it doesn't really have to be round, it's going to be kind of squished anyway. But for now, we're just going to stick with this. So hit the delete key, and we're going to select faces. That one didn't get selected, so delete this as well. Face. Okay, cool. So we got this form. Now I'm going to go ahead and use this to help me with that length of how I want to make this handle, because it's just easier since I already got it, right? If I go back to the negative X, it's kind of like down front, and it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to select these 4 actual polygons or faces, and I'm going to go back to the X. Okay, so the objective here is to kind of squish it into like the same distance as where the handle is here. So we're going to hit the S key, and we're going to, that's basically for scale, and we're going to stretch it only on the Y. See, the green is Y, so if you see green on the bottom, that means it's on the Y. If it's actually reddish, it's actually going to be X. And Z is up. So let's just squish this down. So something like about we can even go about maybe a little bit less, maybe about right here, about the center of that. So basically I went with 2.859, right? And perfect. That's all we needed to start off with to get the first part of the shape here. So the next part is we're going to select the actual lines or edges. Now, just for reference on your keyboard, if you hit 1, it's actually points, 2 is lines, and 3 is actual faces or polygons. And I want to go back to 2. So again, everything down here is below, like I said. So if you select 2 and you select this edge here, we can go to the top view here and kind of figure out how far do I want to go. Now I'm going to go farther than this because I'm going to modify this afterwards, but we're going to hit the E key and we're going to go with the Y because we're going to go in this direction. We'll go up to that edge right there. Cool. And the same thing here. E key, Y, and just bring it down to the edge. All right. So really simple, right? And now the objective here is to kind of create some forms. And we're going to create the whole, we're going to create a bunch of other things before we actually do the extrusion of this object. One thing we're going to first do is now we're going to add in a loop cut. So on your tools on your left here, you have loop cut. You select this, you select the center of this or one of these lines, it'll actually get the whole thing. We're just going to click on it. It means we actually added in a break between all those faces, and they're double the amount of faces now. So what I could do now is go into the modifier stack right here on your right side, click on plus, and when you go in here, you go to generate, and just go to subdivision surface. Now what that has done is added a bunch more detail in here. It's kind of hard to tell. What I normally do is I turn this off when I'm in edit mode, and when I go back in object mode, you'll see the form. Now we can also go in here and just do a shade smooth, and that kind of gives you a representation of what you're creating, right? So this is what it's going to look like from a distance, and it looks fine from a distance, right? But again, when you get close, it gets very blocky, and that's kind of what we're going to work around. Now, if I went up to 2, it's just that much more cleaner, so that's going to make it really nice. But again, the more you add to this, the higher the object becomes. So I've got to keep that in mind when you're building stuff, right? So if I go in here or go back to edit mode, you'll kind of see that, again, I got this turned off. And it doesn't really give you a good understanding until we start creating some more forms. But let's go ahead and continue with this. So, okay, so we're back in edit mode, and we're going to start adjusting some things. As you see, it kind of forms here, but I'm going to hide that. I don't want to see that. And we're going to add in some more detail. And for that, it's very simple. We're going to actually go over here and bring one real close to the edge, kind of like where that line is. And do the same thing over here. We can bring this up out of the way. And again, bring it up to the line. And again, we're going to basically mirror this later on. I'm going to be using hard ups. And if you don't have hard ups, there's another way to do that, of course, with the modifiers with mirror. And I can show you that real quickly in a minute. So first of all, I'm going to add one more center here piece here because I want that to be easy division. So when I mirror, everything works out. So there's that. Now, what else do I need here? Well, I need a lot more detail. So I'm going to add another one between here now and another one between here. This gives us a lot more detail. And again, if I put this back on, you can see kind of how that's kind of forming. It's making it look a lot nicer and a lot more detail. And it gives it a little bit more of a blockiness on the ends. That's kind of the objective here. Okay, so I'm going to turn this off again. And now that I've done that, I'm going to go here and select this. And I need to start adding some more detail here because I need to create these holes. And the only way to do that is, it's a really easy way actually, is just using the form here. So I'm going to simply just go ahead and use this. I'm going to put one in the middle, one there, and then one there. Same thing here. It's really just that simple, right? Just one there, and then one here. And you got now a square. The square is kind of what we need to kind of make this work. So again, I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to work these ends to make it more rounded, but I need to kind of move this over. So to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to select the lines. So I'm going to go back to the Z. Let's select these lines. Now, this thing here is kind of in the way. I'm going to just hide this as well, so it's not interfering with what we're doing. Let's go back to edit mode. So select the object, edit mode, and you see that we only have like an area here with these little blocks and stuff, and it would be much easier if I can kind of just bring this down. So I'm going to hit the G key here on the Y, just kind of bring this a little closer to like maybe the first square there, because I want to have some space there, maybe a little bit higher, right there, and I want space there. The reason for that is I could take these pieces now, these here, and just move them over. Now the best way to do this stuff is to do one side at a time and not do it twice, right? So I'm going to make it more effective by not even messing with this side. I just kind of wanted to show you the reference of how this looks, but I don't normally model that way. I keep that detail like that. So I'm going to hit G key again on the Y just to bring the form down. I'm going to create that nice, kind of blockiness right there. And it just makes the shapes kind of come to life. And yeah, see, this is a little bit wider than this. And again, we could always make it lighter before we do the extrusion. And just select everything and scale it. And this time we're going to do it on the X. We're just going to make it like a little bit wider, something like about, just want to make that hand a little bit thicker for the hand. All right, cool. So we got that worked out. Now the objective here now is to kind of use these things here to kind of work this whole thing. Now, what I would suggest is that we do here is we go ahead and work this piece here. And the way to do that is you can select these four, and we can do a quick inset here. And what that does is it gives us another set of faces here to hold it. And this is really helpful because now that we've done this, it's much easier to kind of work all these things. So we can go in here and just select all this. Actually, the best thing to do is kind of just use the Alt key right here, right? And we can go into right click and loop tools, and that's circle. Now, older versions, I don't believe that the loop tools is showing automatically in your program. If it's not, you just need to go to your edit preferences and you go into your add-ons. And in here, you're going to look for loop tools. See, just make sure that's checked on. This comes with Blender. Just keep that awareness. And click on it, make sure it's on. And then save it over here, and it's always good to go. All right, so now that I have this, I could do loop tools. We could do circle, and that created our circle for us. And this is really nice because now I can go in and modify this. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this and just scale it down a little bit. I think it's a little too big. So let's go ahead and again select this. Make sure this is not selected. Scale. And we're just going to scale it on the top here. Make it a little bit smaller, basically, is what the objective was. Okay, cool. Now, I think this line's a little too close to this form. So let's go ahead and select this. G key on the Y. We're going to bring it a little bit closer to this line. And another thing is we can add in a line here, which is very helpful because it helps keep that edge on the bottom. When you make these lines, it kind of helps create the squareness, when you get closer. Like if I added a line real close to this, it'll make that squarish instead of round. But I want that distance so it actually makes it nice and smooth is the way to look at it. Now, since I've already created this, we can now create this, and this is going to be closer just like that. And we can form this, bring it over a little bit, and this over a little bit. However, I don't want to do that yet, so let me just go back a little bit on that. I first want to start creating the form. So I need to create these lines to kind of extrude. So let's do that next. So if you go here, this gives you understanding how many actual faces you have with this object. So if you select everything here, select all, it kind of gives you, hey, we have like 80 faces here and 180 triangles because it divides everything into triangles. Of course, it's not exactly right because this is not here. So we can actually take this side and just delete it, and we can create the form by just, copying it and rotating it if we wanted to. That's one way to do it, and then reattach those points. So there's a couple different ways to do this, and let me show you kind of those options. So, all right, so we got back in this object here, and let's say we want to do a modifier on this, And we want to make this exactly the same on the other side. We can either cut half of it because we're centered and rotate it over and make a duplication of that. That's one way to do it. Or we can do hard ops, which is very simple. We just go in and click on it. And let me show you what I mean by that. You just go in and select your hard ops right here. And you go back to object mode because it has to be done in this mode. And you can go into mirror and you can just select this side. And see how it kind of created that for us? And that's kind of what it's going to look like once we actually, SUBD this with 2 on it. And see how much more detail that is? It's like quite a bit of faces, right? So again, that's why we kind of control some of the things. And we're going to actually add more than this because we're going to, actually extrude this too. So think of it that way. It's going to be very busy. And if you're far, far away, you don't really care about all that little detail. It just depends on how close you are to something, right? So now this is easy, right? You hit hard ops, it's on YY, it's simple. You just control it from the other side and it's done. It's just real easy. Now if I get rid of this, of course, and again, you want to do the opposite. You see what that information was? It's that simple, right? So if you go here, it's going to be a YY, end clipping, and merge. So when you create this, we can get rid of this. If you don't have that, it's the same thing. We go to generate, mirror, it's just less steps, right? We go to Y and Y, and we take the X off. See, it's the same exact thing. And it's very simple now. This is what it's going to look like. So there's just different ways to control this stuff, but for now I'm not going to worry about the mirror until I'm getting closer. I mean, we could do it now, but let's just go ahead and click on that because there's no need to really modify this side. Okay, so let's continue with what we're doing. All right, so we got the basic forms. We have the roundness. Okay, so a couple things I'm going to do here to make it look nicer. I'm going to select it, go back to edit mode. I'm going to take these. This is exactly, rounded, but the problem is it's kind of squished a little bit when I do this because of this form. We can also add in another face right here around this face right here. So we're going to bring a loop in just to help give us a little bit more detail right there. That will help hold that when we actually get rid of that piece. Okay? So what we can also do now is we can just take this and get rid of these. We can delete these, delete the faces. This is going to make it real easy, so when we extrude, everything is perfectly extruded out. And we have all that detail helping us create the form. Okay? So that's that. Now let's go ahead and start working this. So again, we can select everything here. And we're going to extrude. So I normally just use this when I have a full object like this. And I'll bring this here and I just bring it up. And that gives us a kind of a squished in kind of in the top here. I don't want it too wide, just like that. And now that I've done that, I can actually now click on this. I'll click on that. And again, we can see how this is going to look. You can go back to object mode. That's even better because you'll see all those lines. And you start seeing a lot of really smooth forms. Yes, we're going to have to add some more, forms into the center of this to make it more crisp because it doesn't have a lot of support loops in here to help hold it, That's kind of what it comes down to is the support loops that help control. But this is the kind of form I want, so it's nice and rounded. Yeah, and that's a good way to test it to see how it looks. Okay, cool. So let's continue. So we got the form. Now, a couple things I'm going to do here is I'm going to take now and edit this again. I'm going to take this off so I can see what I'm doing. And I really want to select these lines. So I want to select all 3 of these. I'm going to add a little bit more detail soon to this, but for now, let's just do this. I'm just going to select these ones here. I'm not going to select these. I don't want to mess with that at all. I'm just going to use this and hit G key and on the Z and bring this up. So it gives it a nice rounded form. Okay, so what we can also do here is we can go to the side and kind of just bow this out a little bit. So again, scale on the Y, and we're going to bring it out just a little bit, just to give it a little, push. All right, now we can do the same thing here. Take the center and move this up. G key, Z, just bring it up a little bit. We're trying to create like a rounded, form. So that makes sense. Here we go. We'll go G, Z, and just kind of creating that nice rounded look, right? We don't go too far or too less. Okay. And we can also take the other edges and bring them down if we wanted to. Yeah, I think I'll do that as well. So the Z key, we can go here. I want to make it see-through, so I can kind of select everything here, just like this, and just like this. I'm going to select those, and go back to the X, Z key, and I'm going to bring this down, Z key. Actually, I think I want to also select these inner pieces. So let's take this off. I want to select with this here and select circle. This is much easier to kind of, just use the shift key here. Make sure we get back on polys. See how easy that is? I'm not going to go through it. I'm just going to select those, just like that. All right. So now that I got this, I can kind of move this down, G key, Z, and just bring it down just a little bit. I don't want to go too far with it. I think about right about there. And yeah, I think that looks good. I can now go back to lines. And what I could do is deselect. This is where I want to keep the center right where it is. So we can do the control key here. And just deselect this, this, right down the center here. I'm going to deselect these. I'm going to reselect this on the polygon. Okay. We can go back to lines. And we can kind of just bring this back up a little bit more. So G key on the Z, just to kind of keep that base in there again, similar to what we just did. And we can go back to the lines again. And we can deselect these. And this one, all these around. Make sure you get that other piece here and here. There we go. And this gives us a little bit more of a nice rounded form. See, it's kind of like moving upward now. We can actually go to G key again, Z, and just bring it up a little bit more, just like that. So we're doing like the opposite, and that way we kind of are creating our form. And I'm also going to suggest that we kind of just get this line here and this line here. Make sure we get the right one, and just bring this down a little bit more. Because I want this to kind of look more rounded. So G key on the Z, and it's going to be close to the other one. Not exactly, but just close. Okay, this gives us a nice form. So again, go back to object mode, and see how that's kind of now creating that nice rounded, like handle. It just makes it very smooth. Yeah, very cool, very easy to do. And go back to the Z here. Let's see how this handle's looking. See, don't got a lot of detail in here, but it still looks very rounded, which is what we want. Okay. It's always good to check your object out while you're doing this stuff. Sometimes you need to add more detail. Okay, so what do we do now? How do we create that nice edge now that we got somewhat of a form? We can go over here and start adding in under edit mode. And again, we're going to simply just go ahead and use the loop tool here. And see how I got right here? I could just bring it right up real close and real close here. And that creates that nice form. Now, we could, if we're going to keep everything in Blender, for instance, we would not even have to add that. We could actually just add a crease. Anyway, I'm going to show you how this looks now with this form, because if you're not going to export it out, then you can keep it just the way it is. But if you're going to export it out, it's really good just to, make it into a real object completely. All right, so let's go ahead now and go back to object mode. Let's go here. As you see, it's very smooth. And if you need a little bit more detail, we can go up to 3 and then rendering 3. And it's that simple, right? So now that we've done that, we want to, of course, mirror it to the other side. See, it kept this edge here too by doing what we did. Now, if you wanted to keep even more of an edge, we can always bring another set of lines there. And an easy way to do that is to edit mode. We can actually create another, section right here, for instance. So if you really want to hold that tighter, you can do that just by adding this extra line. Just keep in mind, though, the more you add, the more it makes it, tighter. And you got to think about all this stuff in the midst of it all. But see, it's still kept a really nice form, and it just has a really nice edge to it now. And again, it's 25,000, faces. So again, if this is going to be like your object that's going to be like right in front, and you want it to be clean, then yeah, you got that. So, but if you're not, and you're going to be way over here, I mean, there's no real need to have it on 3. You can go back down just to 1. I mean, or 0. It's just easy to control. When you're rendering, you could set it up to be 0, but at least it's all set up ready for you to go. So you can always go back and forth on your SUBD whenever you're working on a scene. Again, this is not something you might not use, but it could be used for like a hatch or something that you got in your scene that you want to have to look like the character's right next to it or something. So again, let's go ahead and do the mirror now. Modifiers, add modifier, generate, mirror. Again, no X, just Y, Y. And there we go. Again, we're at 1, that's why it's so blocky now. So again, if I go back to 2, 2, yeah, there we go. Now it looks really nice. And like I said, you got about 30,000 faces because of all this detail. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this. Now, what we can do now is, if you don't really have an understanding, we can create just a simple, I guess, a metal surface for this. So we can select it, go back to your actual shading section right here, and you can just, this is already done, of course, and I just use like SanDisk. It's real easy to use materials, but if you don't have that option, you just go new, create a new surface, and in here you can just make this into a metal and kind of bring this down and create the roughness, right? So it actually has a nice shine. And what I normally do is also I always have a world, which would be a HDRI, section here. You bring in an HDR. There's so many out there that you can just get for free. Just do a search on Google, and you just bring it in through the image map. I'll show you that real quickly as well. But let's say you don't have this one, you just pull this out. You're gonna hit environmental texture, and see it's now pink because we have nothing. I always open one. I don't have time to make my own. I don't want to spend the time for that. But HDRs, and you just select something that you have, right? So it's that simple. Just get something that looks good with your scene. And let's see, I would go with something like either this one's good. Open. And now it's more of a bluish, which is fine. If you want more of that shiny chrome look, then this is a good way to go. You could also select this, and if you don't have Node Wrangler on, that's another thing. You just go to Preferences here, and under the actual add-ons, you search for Node. And in here, you want to turn on your Node Wrangler. If you don't have that on, it just doesn't make it easy to do this, but you have to go in and put your mapping and your texturing. You select it, Control T, and you add it. And a lot of times when I have this set up, I always rotate it. Personally, myself, I like it where it's actually around 225 or so. It just has a better lighting to it. And again, depends where you're on your scene, of course, but it rotates around, your scene. And let's go ahead and unhide this. And this object here was again a surface that was from SanDisk materials, and it just looks really nice. So I would make sure that this object was brought down a little bit more. So G key on the Z, and there we go. As you see, it's very simple to create. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please subscribe and like if you wouldn't mind with thumbs up. Have a great day. Take care.